Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Key Gripe, and this is a special episode of Key Gripe because I'm not talking about one movie, I'm talking about the first half of 2016. I figure it's July 4th, it's probably a good time as any to do a halfway mark and see kind of where we are on the first half of the year. It's been an interesting first half. We've had some pretty good movies come out, a lot of comic book movies, a lot of sequels, but we've also had some original movies or some new franchises that they're starting. And the box office has also shown some pretty interesting things as well. Some movies that were surprise hits, like made $1 billion that probably weren't expected to make $1 billion, and then movies that had a lot of hype to them and then just kind of fell flat. But what I'm really going to talk about is kind of the first half roundup of what were the best, what were the worst. Actually, in the opposite order, I'm going to talk about what the worst and the best, kind of in some categories, and then kind of also look forward to what's coming out in the second half of 2016, since there are some really good movies coming out. And keep in mind, all the movies here I'm talking about are movies that I have seen. I'm not going to speculate on other movies that I haven't seen and to say, well, this movie probably should have been or nothing, because if I haven't seen it, I can't make an opinion on it. That's just the way I operate. And most of the movies here also have a Key Gripe review, so after I talk about it here, you can certainly go back and watch some of the original Key Gripe reviews of these movies, but not all of them do. There's a few of them that I didn't see in theaters, and since I only do reviews of movies I see in theaters, with certain exceptions, not all of these are going to have a Key Gripe review here on YouTube. So, without further ado, I'm going to jump right into the first half roundup of 2016. So, first category is the top 5 worst movies. Now, these are not in any particular order, but just based on the ratings that I gave these movies, these are the top 5 lowest rated movies that I had for the first half of the year. And those movies are Independence Day Resurgence, The Boss, Dirty Grandpa, Angry Birds Movie, and X-Men Apocalypse. Those are the 5 that are the lowest rated that I had in the first half of the year. And not really any surprises there. Actually, the biggest surprise might be X-Men Apocalypse, because a lot of people did thoroughly enjoy that movie, but I did not. I was extremely disappointed by it. So, but the other ones probably make more sense. Independence Day Resurgence, definitely. The Boss, just another generic Melissa McCarthy movie. Dirty Grandpa, which was just a stupid movie. And the Angry Birds movie, which, again, was also a very stupid movie. So, those are my top 5 lowest rated movies. Now, the top 5 highest rated movies are Captain America Civil War, Zootopia, Eye in the Sky, 10 Cloverfield Lane, and Deadpool. Obviously, the biggest surprise here is the fact that of those movies, 2 of them are comic book movies. And obviously, we talk about the excess of comic book movies coming out these days, but that doesn't mean that all we get are comic book movies. But what this year has kind of shown is actually comic book movies are getting better, and they're doing more with it. I mean, Winter Soldier, certainly, actually even before Winter Soldier, we had The Dark Knight and Iron Man. 2 movies that really started to show that comic book movies can be more than just superhero fighting movies. Granted, Iron Man still fell in kind of that category, but it gave us something more and helped build what the MCU has become. And now we get movies like Civil War, which have just some fantastic stories to them. Deadpool, which was just a surprise movie all around. So comic book movies are getting better. And then, of course, Zootopia was just a beautifully done movie. Eye in the Sky is one I wish I had done a Key Gripe review, because I have so much to say about that movie. And maybe I'll do a review on it at some point, for my, the last movie I watched or something. But it's a very good movie. And then, of course, 10 Cloverfield Lane was a, surprise sequel that turned out to be quite a surprisingly good movie. So those are my top 5 best. Again, not in any particular order. The top 3 animated movies, Zootopia, Finding Dory, and Kung Fu Panda 3. Not a lot of animated movies that have come out. There's certainly going to be a lot more coming out in the next few months. But we had some very good ones. Zootopia and Finding Dory are both good movies. Zootopia is far better than Finding Dory. And Kung Fu Panda 3 was a good close to that series. I hope it's a close to the series. Because it did not do as well as the first 2, I think. Top 3 comic book movies. We didn't have a ton of comic book movies, but we did have some very good ones. And this one is actually in order of the top three: Captain America Civil War, Deadpool, Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice. And like I said, Captain America and Deadpool both kind of like rose above the typical superhero trope movies. They were both somewhat unique in their presentation, and that made them better movies. Batman v Superman is one that I've also obviously talked about quite a bit, and has gotten a lot of criticism. It's pretty much black and white, who loves it, who hates it, but it actually was a surprisingly good movie. If you want to know why, just go back and listen to watch my Key Gripe review of Batman v Superman. It is a very good movie. Top three comedies. I didn't see a lot of good comedies this year, the first half of this year. So my top three are going to be in this order, actually: Deadpool, The Nice Guys, and Eddie the Eagle. Deadpool, can continue talking about how great that movie is. The Nice Guys it's not really a comedy, but it was funny. Just the way that the characters were done, the story itself, it was a comedy. And Eddie the Eagle, same thing, was meant to be kind of this like inspirational sports movie, and it turned out to be quite humorous as well. Taron Egerton and Hugh Jackman playing off each other really well to make that movie fun and entertaining and funny. So those are my top three comedies for the year. Delicious. Alright, now we're getting into some other kind of categories here of, superlative sort of things. So, biggest disappointment. This one was actually kind of tough because there were a few movies that were extremely disappointing. But when I think of the idea of biggest disappointment, the one that comes to mind the most would be The Witch. And I didn't do a review of this one because I only recently saw it. But The Witch was a movie with so much potential, and actually I disagree with a lot of people that say it was a boring movie. It was a slow movie, yes, but it was not a boring movie. It was tense. It was, really well filmed, really well done. This just like great folktale type of story. But why was I disappointed with it? Because they left way too much on the table. It was one of those movies that particularly the ending, was just so bad. And they could have done so much more with it. I mean, it's like, it went from being a really solid movie, something that like I was hoping would be kind of a throwback to old school horror. And I don't mean like 70s slasher horror. I mean like Rosemary's Baby type of horror. Good horror movies. And The Witch just did not deliver. It delivered on the tension, but it did not deliver on any of the promises that it had throughout. And the ending of the movie almost reminded me of The Ninth Gate, just without the visual, or the, I guess maybe like the story strength behind it that The Ninth Gate had. So The Witch would be my biggest disappointment. Again, I don't actually think it was a bad movie, but it was disappointing in terms of what they could have done with it. So, now the biggest surprise was, brace yourselves, Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice. And why do I say it was the biggest surprise? Well, two reasons. One, I went into it with very low expectations. For the last 2 years, I've been thinking this movie is going to be a train wreck. And a lot of people might think, well, it was a train wreck. So, but I went into it with so little hope. And when I walked out of it, the reason I was so excited, so pleased with it, was what they did with it and how they kind of took what they did with Watchmen and put it into this Batman and Superman movie, which, when you start to get into kind of the moral, or the implications of having a god character, which is what Superman is, and which is why I've always hated Superman. When you have a character like that, the actual like real world implications of that are pretty significant. And this movie did a fantastic job of going into that. The story might have been a little muddled, but the fact that that was the focus, was this address of like, with somebody who has such power, they're dangerous. And when it came to, there's a line in that movie that I keep coming back to. It's that, if God is all powerful, then he can't be all good, and if he is all good, then he can't be all powerful. Or it's basically, that's the line that Lex speaks. And I think that just sums up that movie it sums it up so perfectly well, and I think that's why a lot of people didn't like it, is because they didn't want that particular message. They wanted, the classic like Superman versus Batman kind of thing, which I think would have brought this movie down a lot. Instead, they addressed some of like the bigger, moral implications of having a god character. So that would be my biggest surprise. Category unnecessary sequels. Since a lot of movies, especially at this time of year, the May, June time frame, you're going to get a lot of sequels. And the question is, which is the most unnecessary sequel? So despite in my Finding Dory review that I said, well, this one is kind of an unnecessary movie, there's one that really stands out, and that would be Independence Day Resurgence. Not only did we not need it, especially now, like if we had gotten this 15 years ago, maybe it would have been okay. But since it's been 20 years, and what they did with the story and all the choices they made this movie just a complete train wreck and also completely unnecessary. So I really wish they had not, gotten my hopes up for an Independence Day sequel, only to give us Independence Day Resurgence, which is basically a garbage fire. My guilty pleasure. So which movie did I know was not that good, but I still enjoyed the hell out of it? And that movie's going to be How to Be Single. And it's weird because, it's such a simple movie, it's such a cliche movie, but it's so enjoyable in my mind. But I also know that it's incredibly flawed. It has a lot of bad parts in it. It's one of those kind of like 50-50 type of movies where it's like half the movie is really good and the other half is pretty bad. But I just enjoy the hell out of it for some reason. So How to Be Single is my guilty pleasure. And the feel-good movie of the year, I'd say, goes to Eddie the Eagle, which it pains me that not enough people saw this movie. Granted, it's a movie about ski jumping, so how many people are going to be really excited about ski jumping, especially when it's by somebody who's not, the most, interesting character. When you look at the preview, it's like, this guy just seems like a goof. But when you watch the movie, you understand it, and it's such it just makes the feels go up. It's a really good feel-good movie. Highly enjoyable, very funny, very heartwarming movie. And it saddens me that more people did not see it, because I think it's a great movie. It's a fantastic movie. And it definitely made me feel good. I walked out of the theater smiling on that one. Okay. So, the least funny movie I've seen this year is going to go to The Boss. The Boss was, another one of those Melissa McCarthy tent poles where, honestly, she cannot carry a movie by herself. She needs someone like Kristen Wiig or Sandra Bullock or even Jason Statham in Spy. Somebody to kind of play off of. Because when she does it on her own, one of these, Ben Falcone directed movies, it just doesn't work. And The Boss it fell flat so many times. Not even Peter Dinklage could save this movie. They tried. There were points where you could see they were like, please laugh at this joke, please. And it just didn't work. It was a very unfunny movie. The funniest, though, has got to go to Deadpool. For every reason I've already, explained in the Key Gripe review of Deadpool, it's just a funny movie, and the character, they nailed the character well, of just how ridiculous he is, and how funny the movie is. Everything he did in that movie was just hilarious. It is easily Deadpool. It's no contest Deadpool. So, another drink. I swear, it's only water. It's like 9 a.m., so I don't start vodka till 11. Alright, next category. I disagree with the critics. So this is one that's kind of weird for me because, I don't put a lot of stock into critic reviews, and yet I still kind of do. Like, there are movies that I will skip because I was already on the fence about it, and then when I see critic reviews come out, I say no. And then there's movies that I'm not really interested in, like The Shallows. When I see that the critic reviews actually are pretty positive, then it's like, maybe I'll give it a chance. And it turns out to be a decent movie. But the movies that I disagree with the critics are going to be Warcraft and Hail Caesar, in the respective that the critics thought they were bad and the critics thought they were good. Critics thought Warcraft was bad. It's basically sitting at a 30% on Rotten Tomatoes and a 32 Metacritic. Warcraft was not a great movie, but it was not a horrible movie. It was a mediocre movie at best, but it was one that the reason I disagree with the critics so much is the most common argument against it is that this movie was made for fans. Well, why not? Of course it was made for fans. This is a billion-dollar game that people have been playing for 25 years. Of course they're going to make this movie for fans. So to hold that against a movie, I'm kind of sick of that argument. It's like, this is just made for the fans. Well, maybe you should be making movies for fans. But I also think that their negative reviews also hurt the chances of that movie doing well here in the States, which it did. It flopped here in the States. And then Hail Caesar was a movie that they said was, good, a return to form for the Coen brothers. I did not see it. The Hail Caesar was a weak movie. It has an 85% on Rotten Tomatoes right now and a 72 Metacritic, which is pretty positive. It was not that good. It was a mess of a movie, and so much of it was you want to talk about a movie made for fans. This is a movie made for critics because it's like, the movie industry, so enjoy this. This is a jab at the movie industry. Oh, ha ha, insider laugh. But the rest of us are like, this is stupid. This movie is just incoherent, and there wasn't really a good solid foundation for this movie. Like, I love the Coen brothers. I am a huge Coen brothers fan, but this movie was not what the critics said it was. It was a bad movie. And then the movie that failed to live up to the hype, I'm going to give that one to X-Men Apocalypse, because as soon as when they announced that they were going to do Apocalypse, I got so excited. And then we got this. We got this movie that was just a mess of a movie. It was so predictable. It was weak, especially in terms of what we're getting nowadays in terms of comic book movies. All the other three comic book movies I've talked about, Civil War, Deadpool, Batman v Superman, all three of those movies gave us something new, gave us something to think about. X-Men Apocalypse didn't give us anything to think about. And so I was extremely disappointed with the fact that, they built this movie up to be this great return to form for X-Men, and it definitely was not. It was not at all. So, and now, where I agree with the critics, where movies were good and movies were bad. So the movie that the critics said was good, and I totally agree with, was Deadpool. Deadpool is like winning the day here in terms of like the good movies, but and I didn't even give it that great of a review. But it was a fantastic movie, and the critics were right that what this movie did was unique, and it was funny, it was outrageous, it was over the top, and that's what made it good. That's what made us all want to go see it. Sitting at 84% right now on Rotten Tomatoes and a 65 Metacritic. In terms of the bad movie, which I absolutely agree with, sitting at 11% on Rotten Tomatoes with an 18 Metacritic, is Dirty Grandpa. This movie had some laughs, but overall it was so cliche and so just like over-the-top stupid. Deadpool is over-the-top brilliant. Dirty Grandpa was over-the-top stupid. And it's like this, it was basically Robert De Niro doing the same joke over and over again for an hour and a half. So, Dirty Grandpa was a just terrible movie. Like I said, it had some funny parts, but overall, it was bad. It was a really bad movie. And then the movie that lived up to the hype goes to Captain America Civil War, because I don't think, with the exception of maybe Batman v Superman, I don't think any movie had a bigger challenge in front of it of winning audiences over, but Captain America Civil War absolutely delivered, especially in the third act, which was between the superhero fight and the final battle with the Revelation and the Iron Man versus Captain America and Winter Soldier. It was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant. So definitely Captain America Civil War lived up to the hype. So now, I've seen a lot of movies in the first half of this year, but I've also missed a lot of movies. And there's some that I wish I had seen, some I'm really glad I did not see. And so the movies that I'm really glad that I skipped are My Big Fat Greek Wedding 2 and Alice Through the Looking Glass. So, My Big Fat Greek Wedding was a funny movie. It was cute. When it came out, it was, unexpected and interesting. We didn't need a sequel, and especially one that came out, 15 years later. So, Big Fat Greek Wedding 2 just did not have any interest in seeing that one. And then Alice Through the Looking Glass. I hated Alice in Wonderland. Tim Burton's Alice in Wonderland is a nightmare. It is so bad. And the second one, I couldn't even imagine them making a second one, except the first one made $1 billion, so of course they're going to do it. I'm really glad I didn't see this one, because not only does it have a very poor review, very poor rating on Rotten Tomatoes, but it actually did flop. So I'm really glad I did not see either of these movies. Now, the movie I wish I had seen was The Lobster, starring Colin Farrell. It just sounded like an interesting, quirky concept. Guy basically like having to find love before he turns, a certain age. It's kind of one of those weird sci-fi type of Logan's Run sort of concepts, but turned into like a romantic comedy. So I really wish I had seen The Lobster, and I'm sure I will as soon as it comes out on Redbox. All right. Man, I'm thirsty this morning. All right, Oscar watch. So it's probably a little early to start talking about Oscars and movies that because of all the movies that have come out, when I talk about my top 5 movies, which of those sounds like an Oscar movie? There really isn't one. I mean, we've had some pretty decent movies come out, like Zootopia, Eye in the Sky, 10 Cloverfield Lane, The Jungle Book. I mean, there's some movies that were surprising, but I mean, in terms of like any of them that are Oscar worthy, we haven't had a ton. But if there's a movie that I think is worthy of Oscar consideration, it would probably be Eye in the Sky. And again, I wish I had done a review of this one. Eye in the Sky is a tense movie, and it deals with some very interesting concepts about modern warfare. So, and it's one that has great performances all around. It's a tense movie, really well done. Some cheesy visual effects, but overall a really well done movie by Gavin Hood. And I think it could potentially get some discussion for an Oscar, very potentially. But it's certainly one that if I were voting at this point, I would certainly put that in the running. And a kind of runner-up for that would be The Jungle Book. And the only reason I would put that is it is a movie that the Oscars seems like they would be curious to nominate, just because of the story, the fact that it's so beautifully done, and just the reaction to it. It has an extremely high, rating on Rotten Tomatoes and Metacritic, and it was extremely well received by the public. So it's one of those movies that you could definitely see the Oscars, the Academy potentially giving something to. Now, in terms of performances, I'm going to go with the potential Oscar watch. This one is really hard because it was like I didn't really see any performances that I would say that one has to get a nomination. But there are a couple that I think could very well vie for him. John Goodman in 10 Cloverfield Lane, I could see him getting a supporting actor nod. Even though he's the top bill in that movie, he really was the supporting character. It was more about Mary Elizabeth Winstead's character. But he plays the creepy guy so well in that movie. It would be something I think they could easily justify having John Goodman get a Oscar nod for 10 Cloverfield Lane. And then Helen Mirren for Eye in the Sky. She plays this colonel who is just hard as a nail, and I mean, but given her situation, I mean, she has to be that way. Helen Mirren is, she is a fantastic actress in everything she does. So, it's, why not give her an Oscar nod for, supporting actress, maybe? I don't know. This is a hard category, or this is a hard movie to say who's, probably lead actress if she were nominated for this movie, but certainly I think she could get a nod for this one. Now, for my favorite performances from the year, those are going to go to, for the male performance, it actually is a buddy pick here, and that's Ryan Gosling and Russell Crowe in The Nice Guys. Neither one of them really stood out, I thought, but together they stood out. Like as a duo, as like a buddy cop kind of like Lethal Weapon duo, I think they stood out. Because they played off each other so well, and it just made that movie so entertaining and fun to watch. For female performance, I have to give it to Blake Lively for The Shallows. That movie was her. Like, there was nothing else in that movie. So she really had to play it really well, and she did. I gotta give her a lot of credit for how well she played her character in The Shallows, and just, built that tension and showed the emotion throughout the movie. She did a great job. So those are my favorite performances from the year. And when I talk about favorite versus best, that's because best is when I'm looking at things from an objective standpoint. Favorite are ones that I'm just like, man, I loved that performance. It was, because Because, like, Ryan Reynolds in Deadpool, I love that performance. That doesn't mean I think it is objectively an Oscar-worthy performance. Now we're getting into the finals. So, my favorite movie from the first half of this year was Zootopia. Zootopia is just a beautiful movie, so much fun to watch, and just a surprise. Like, I didn't expect this movie to be as good as it was, and it was flawless. It was such a great movie. And that's why it's my favorite movie from the first half of the year. The worst movie, though, of the first half of the year, objectively, the worst movie, easily, Independence Day Resurgence. It's sad to say that, but it really was the worst movie I saw this year. And I can't say enough bad things about it, because it is a train wreck. Even a train wreck would be more interesting than this movie. So, best movie of the year so far in the first half of 2016, have to give it to Zootopia. So not only was it my favorite, but I think it is objectively the best movie. And how do I say that? Is because they came up with an interesting story, and they threw in this social undertone to it that I really didn't see coming from a movie from Disney. But they did it. They did it extremely well. It's an extremely fun movie, fantastic story, just overall one of probably Disney's best movie in quite a long time. Obviously, Pixar has been making great movies for a long time, but Disney has struggled. And Zootopia, though, they nailed it. They really did nail it. So, best movie of the year so far is Zootopia. Alright, one last drink. Oh, man. I need to do these videos later in the day. Just saying. So, alright. So, that's the first half roundup of 2016, but we've still got the second half. So, we've already seen, it's July 4th, so there's a few movies that have already been released. BFG, The Purge, whichever Purge sequel they have out now. So there's a few movies that have already come out, but there's also a bunch that I am really looking forward to, and also some that I'm a little worried about. So, just as kind of like a little preview of what's to come. Oscar watch films, there's a few movies that are certainly coming out that have some buzz around them from festivals that I'm really interested to see. Captain Fantastic, starring Viggo Mortensen, sounds like an interesting, quirky, Little Miss Sunshine type of quirky movie. And then Birth of a Nation, which I'm really excited about because it sort of takes that title back from the D.W. Griffiths movie and focuses on the Nat Turner Rebellion. The animated movie I'm most excited to see coming up is Moana, the next Disney movie. It'll be an interesting movie. I know it's already has some controversy around it, but the story, I think, it visually looks fantastic. The story sounds interesting, so it could be just another magical type of Disney movie that we'll see. So I'm really excited about that. Comic book upcoming, we've got two big ones I know coming out: Suicide Squad and Doctor Strange. But Suicide Squad is easily the one I'm anticipating the most, because just everything about this movie has the potential to be either amazing or a nightmare. But from early stuff, it's sounding like it's going to be amazing, so I'm very excited about that. Comedy upcoming, this one's kind of tough, and actually I'm picking an animated movie here, but I'm putting it more in the comedy because it's not a kid's movie necessarily. It's Sausage Party. That movie, it just looks bizarre and horrifyingly funny. About, the life of food. So taking like a Pixar movie, but about food, and obviously food doesn't usually suffer a great fate. So I'm definitely interested in Sausage Party. The most worrisome movie that's coming up, that has got to be Ben-Hur. And the reason is, Ben-Hur, the original, or the movie, the William Wyler Ben-Hur, is an amazing film. Just from every angle, it's an amazing film. What we've seen in the trailers here from Timur Bekmambetov's adaptation of it is terrifying. It looks horrid, which is scary to me because I was kind of curious to see how they could take Ben-Hur and make it a modern story, like how they can put it, with modern effects and really amp it up. But from what it sounds like, they're going to take it from this interesting epic story to something that's much more of a, like revenge story. The first one was a revenge story, but it wasn't nearly as, it wasn't a, Taken kind of revenge story, whereas this one definitely seems like it is. So the movies I'm definitely most looking forward to, The Birth of a Nation, obviously, that one it looks like such a good movie, and I really, really want to see that. I love Civil War era movies, which is why I'm kind of disappointed I haven't seen Free State of Jones yet, but Birth of a Nation just looks like a superb movie. And then Rogue One, a Star Wars story. This one, I could go either way as being really excited or really worried about, but no matter what, I'm just excited to see something new out of the Star Wars universe, like an anthology movie. This is our first anthology movie, which, for a franchise that's been around for 40 years, that's significant. So I'm extremely excited to see what they do with Rogue One, a Star Wars story. Very excited. So, wow, that's a lot of stuff right there. That's my first half roundup, though, of 2016, and I'm looking forward to the rest of 2016, because I know we've got some really good movies coming up here. So let me know what you think, what you thought was the best movie of the first half, or the worst movie, or just kind of give me a list. Say, well, here are my top 5, or top 5 worst. Just let me know. Like I said, I love comments. Comments are fun. So that's my show, and hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time on Key Gripe.